Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be revisiting the excellent game in progress by Nick Salmon and Rolf Grein, Dreadnoughts, Fortresses of Steel. Now the reason I'm coming back to this game was twofold really. The first one is that after some dialogue with potential publishers, they have been making slight changes to the rules in an effort to make the game a bit more, not more playable because it's really excellent, or it was in its original form, but to broaden its appeal, if I can put it that way. Because what they produced first time round with their early version was an excellent simulation of very late 19th and very early 20th century naval warfare, classic big gun actions. The only difficulty there is that there are certain steps in the turn procedures, and particularly when it comes to the long range firing and ranging your guns in, which were quite involved. So what they've done is they've very successfully, in my opinion, streamlined this process. It's kept a lot of the historical fidelity of the games I've played of the new system. You get very, very believable and historically plausible results, but it plays much faster, and you're subjected to just a bit less analysis paralysis. If I were to put it in simple terms, I'd say the original game was very much the experience of an admiral or a commodore commanding a squadron. But a lot of the decision making a player had to do was sort of captain and senior officer level. And what they've done is they've nudged it very gently to being more the admiral's experience, and the nitty gritty is handled by the game system now. You'll see what I mean in a bit. If you need a refresher, watch my brief couple of turns sample playthrough of the game in its original form and see how it compares to the game now. Now, I mentioned there were two reasons I wanted to do this. The other one is I've been itching for a while to do a complete playthrough of a scenario from start to finish. And this is what this is going to be. So I've decided, because I'm quite interested in that conflict, you probably guessed from some of the other videos on my channel, the Spanish-American War holds a particular fascination for me, this very brief conflict between Spain and the United States in 1898. But what I've done is I've not followed the history of that naval campaign very strictly. So in order to mix it up a bit, I've decided I'll play as the Spanish. And at the outset of war, I've decided that the Spanish have been given a little bit more freedom of action than they were given historically by their senior naval leadership and their government. So, knowing the limitations of many of the other ships in Spain's arsenal, I've decided that my primary weapon when it comes to operations in the Caribbean and the Atlantic are going to be the four fast armored cruisers in the Spanish Navy, the three sisters of the Oquendo type, and the lone Cristobal Colon, which of course, true to history, does not have her primary armament installed. Poor Spain, I know. Now, to generate the US opposition, I created 6 different task forces with some overlap between them. So one of the task forces, the one you see here, comprises 4 battleships. Others comprised just 2 armored cruisers. Yet more were a mix of battleships and armored cruisers, some of them more modern, some of them less. And I just rolled a dice to see which force I would be lucky or unlucky enough to encounter. And unfortunately for me, this is my classic die rolling coming back to bite me. I find myself facing the most powerful of the 6 US task forces I put together. So this may be a brief and glorious battle, but I'm not entirely convinced the Spanish will enjoy themselves very much. But never mind, it makes for a good scenario to play from start to the bitter end. I am allowing the Spanish to win by escaping. If I can put enough distance between myself and the US squadron, after what my leaders would consider a respectable exchange of fire, then I'm happy to call that a win. The US, of course, the burden is on them to crush me, and they have a golden opportunity to do it. So just as a refresher, because I know it's been a couple of months since I've done a video on this game, there have been some updates, and there are components most of the components you'll have seen before, but they've been altered. So those of you who remember the situation chart will see that there's now 2 tracks on it. That's the maneuver advantage track, which shows which side is outmaneuvering the other. For the purposes of this exercise, blue is advantage United States, red is advantage Spain. And you can start by faintly outmaneuvering someone, and it reduces their chances of hitting you, all the way down to crossing their T, which is what everyone wants to do. The other is the battle range track, covering everything from extreme, which would be about 7,000 yards, give or take, all the way down to point blank, where you're basically 400 yards or less away, spitting distance in naval terms. Now, before I dive in, I've got my cheat card, very necessary. A quick reminder about the anatomy of a ship card. So while this game is controlled by action cards, which players play from their hands, the ship cards are all important. So the crew space there is to record your crew's skill, if they happen to have a skill, or they might be a poor crew if you're very unlucky. Sorry for my paper cutouts. These spaces mark the various locations around a ship that can be damaged. So funnel, conning tower, main turret, secondary guns. These are amalgamations of the 2 types of armament. Ram bow, if the ship has one, the vessel's flotation, and torpedoes, again, if it has them. The small numbers are the protection or armor factor. That's additional effects, in this case -1 to your speed if you take a funnel hit, reduced speed if you suffer from flooding, and penalties to your card draw. That's your basic speed. Maximum speed is 5 for the USS Oregon, and it can be adjusted up or down. I use dice to mark the current speed. Armament gives you the ship's historical armament with any modifiers, and that is the game effects. You can see, as before, primary armament differs in terms of how it works from secondary armament, and torpedoes are something else again. Fire levels, that's how much fire a ship can tolerate in terms of being set on fire before it starts to run into trouble. If all of a ship's fireboxes are filled, then it's engulfed and considered sunk. Some of these boxes are highlighted in red. Now that's important because if all of them are occupied by damaged markers, in the case of turrets, it has to be complete damage rather than partial damage. A ship is considered crippled if all those spaces are filled. Similarly, if the penultimate firebox has a fire marker, the ship is also crippled. Being crippled is not good news, and it's very hard to come back from. This here is the ship's size profile and target modifier number, and in this case S for small, and any special rules about these ships. So the Oregon, by virtue of the fact that she doesn't have much freeboard, is vulnerable to poor weather. It does affect her firing. So there we go. Those are the ships in a nutshell. So I've set up my ships in opposing squadrons. They've met each other. Now the first thing I'm going to do is determine the quality of my crew and my admirals. Now this is not always necessary, especially if you're crafting your own scenario. You can just assume that all admirals and all crew are created equal. But I really like the wrinkle offered by variable quality. So I'm going to draw for the Spanish admiral first. Draw a card, and the random number is 0. That's bad, because according to the national modifiers chart, the Spanish get a -1, which means the only thing less than 0 is an X. So I have a particularly dim admiral. who imposes a -2 hand size on his squadron. That is not good. Not good at all. So I am going to mark my poor admiral with a red dice with its 2 side facing up. That's just to remind me that my hand size is 2 cards lower than it should be. That's not very helpful, is it? What about the United States? They've got a 4, but again, that's not the end of the story, because being one of the better trained navies, the US gets a +1, making it 5. So their admiral is experienced, and he adds 1 to the hand size. Oh dear. So I shall award our happy US admiral a blue dice, indicating that he ups his hand size by 1. Sigh. Now, there are various grades of crew quality that you can get. Most of them don't have a direct impact on gameplay, and they're only important if you're playing a campaign of linked missions where they can either gain experience or lose it through casualties. So for a one-off game, all that matters is whether your crew are a veteran crew or whether they're a poor crew. And in order for them to be a poor crew, you have to draw a random number of X, basically. Or if they're to be veteran, it's a 7. Now, the same national modifiers apply. You can determine your crews for the entire squadron at 1 card draw, or in smaller games, you can do it by ship. I like to mix things up a bit, so let's do it by ship. Flagship. That's down to a 0. Not a great crew, but it doesn't affect us. Cristobal Colon. Again, not brilliant, but not too terrible. Let's see how you do. Ooh. Now, unfortunately, they would have been a veteran crew, but the Spanish modifier reduces them, unfortunately, to the highest level of mediocrity, if I can call it that. No offense to the brave men who crewed these ships historically. And lastly, we have a 6 reduced to a 5. So in game terms, the quality of the Spanish crews has no immediate impact. What about the United States with their +1 bonus? Nah, nothing to write home about. No, not much better. No. And USS Texas, lastly? No. Okay, so in terms of the quality of our men, we're doing all right. It's just the failures of leadership that I need to worry about. So the next thing we determine is the weather. Now, because this is taking place in the Caribbean, the modifiers are not too... I'll just check what they are, actually, because, again, so much thought has gone into this game. There's weather modifiers for different oceans around the world. So, Caribbean... Okay, right. So to determine the starting sea state, you draw a card and you halve the random number. So that's 2. So sea state 2, and I didn't draw an odd number, so a modifier doesn't apply. Okay, so it's a nice gentle day in the Caribbean. So that is the sea state card. The first thing you check is visibility. Now, because sea state 2 is really nice and gentle, the visibility is automatically good out to extreme. So we sight each other quite a distance away. But I do have to draw again to see whether we get any fog or squalls. Now, there's a number range there, 1 for squalls, 2 to 3 for fog. Let's see what I get. I get a 6, so the weather conditions are so good. At least for the first deck, we don't have any fogs or squalls. And that is it for setup. We are now ready to go. So I need to deal cards to both sides. And the hand sizes in this game can get pretty hefty, especially if you have a lot of ships involved. Now, because I have commanding officers of admiral rank in both, the squadrons are immediately entitled to start with a formation card. So they begin the game in formation effectively. Formation does two things. It allows you to conduct the kind of maneuvers that allow you to try and build up an advantage on the maneuvering track or reduce your opponents. You always place these next to your flagship so that people know that they're in force. I am placing them, it's just I'm afraid my poor camera doesn't quite have the width to cover this very long battle line. So to work out the hand sizes, it's 3 cards per player, that's your base value, plus 1 card for each ship which isn't crippled, plus 2 for a formation card if it's in play, and then any other modifiers, your admiral modifier. So the Spanish start with a 7 card hand, and the US starts with a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we get 7 cards, the US gets 10 cards. Yeah, could be better. So I'm just going to shuffle the deck, deal the cards out. Now, as the Spanish are technically defending their far-flung empire from, I suppose, what you would call a US incursion, I will let the US go first because they're technically the attacker. Or, if this is more fun, I could just draw for it, couldn't I? Because this is very much a chance sighting. Yeah, scratch that. The US is the attacker, but we'll draw for it. So the Spanish drew a 3, and the US drew a 6. Okay. The US have caught us unprepared, and they are making the first move. So, looking at his hand, the US player can see he's got quite a few options. He could either start with a bit of long-range fire, or he could maneuver for advantage, or he could try to get closer. Now, these various options have their attractions. Long-range fire in this game, as you'd expect historically, is hugely inaccurate. But for the purposes of a demonstration, because it doesn't really bother the US, their ships are heavily armoured, they definitely outgun the Spaniards, and the thought has occurred to me that they do want to prevent the Spaniards from escaping. So what they might do is possibly throw caution to the winds and just try to close with their opponents. Yeah, they'll give that a go. So the US are going to play a maneuvering card and attempt to close. Now I, as the Spaniard, I've got some long range, well, I may have, yes, I have some long range firing cards, and I do want to keep the Americans at arm's length a bit, so at least at this stage in the proceedings. So I am going to attempt to counter their maneuver with one of my own. Just a reminder about how the action cards work in this game. Black cards can be played on your turn. Red cards are played as a reaction on an enemy's turn. And those which bear both colours can be used either way. So the US squadron is manoeuvring to close. I'm going to try and stop them. Now's probably a good time to just remind you all of the flow of play. Each turn, each ship in a squadron may take one action. And an action could come in 2 forms. It can either be a card played by an individual vessel, like a firing card, or it could be a card played by the flagship, which applies to the entire squadron, like a maneuvering card. There are some exceptions with special rules, but broadly speaking, the golden rule is 1 card is 1 action, ship takes 1 action. If the ships are in close enough range, their secondary guns and their torpedoes can fire for free, and it doesn't count as an action and doesn't require the play of a card. Hopefully all that will make more sense as play progresses. It's fairly straightforward, quite an easy system. So As the Spanish are trying to counter the US move, following the instructions on the card, they can only successfully do it if they draw a random number of 3 or greater. And we have to take into account the speed difference. Now, the Spanish have an advantage here. We're all traveling at a speed of 6, which equates to about 18 knots. The US squadron, with its slower ships, is doing about 15. So we do get a +1. And we do it. We stop the US move, or at least we prevent them from getting closer. But this comes with a potential risk as well, because each time you play a maneuvering card, you have to draw a card to see whether you've lost your formation, because whenever a fleet maneuvers either to close the range or try and get a tactical advantage, there's always a risk your formation will either be strained or worse, start to come apart. So I'll draw for the US first, as they initiated the move. They need to get 3 or better to keep their formation. And they do it. Do the Spanish? Yes, we do. Okay. So that is the end of the US turn, because at extreme range their secondary guns can't fire and neither can their torpedoes. In terms of end of turn admin, nobody's on fire, nobody needs to reload torpedo tubes, and nobody's checking morale. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They just draw 1 card to replace the one they've spent. And play now passes to the Spanish. So I have no maneuvering cards now, and I'm wondering if I should try a shot. I'm tempted to do a defiant shot, because really I think it's reasonable if I land a solid blow on one of the US ships, or maybe a couple of them, I could withdraw with honor intact. So I'm going to attempt salvo fire. Now, those of you who remember the previous iteration of this game will remember there was a system of building up a straddle level on a target ship before you could start firing proper salvos or even broadsides. This has changed massively. There are now 2 types of long-range fire card in the game. There's the salvo fire card and there's the ranging fire card. Now that's the strength of a salvo card, and that's the ranging fire card that's required to play it. So in order to fire this salvo, I need a ranging card of equivalent or greater strength, so an RF2 or an RF3. Luckily for me, I have an RF3. So I am going to try a long-range shot at the US ship, appropriately with my flagship, the Admiral Oquendo. So I'm just going to zoom in a bit so you can see what's going on, because this is one of the meatier bits of the game. Let's get you guys properly zoomed in. Nice. So the Oquendo is going to open fire. She's got her ranging card, her ranging fire card, and the salvo is going to be fire strength 3, and the target is the Indiana. Now, looking at their cards, the US doesn't seem to have... No, the US has no reaction cards they can play to that. As an example, the Spanish have an evasive action card in hand, which could have helped. So the way you calculate whether you've hit or not is you take the basic value of your salvo fire and you run down these various modifications before adding a random number. And if your final total is 6 or greater, you've scored a hit. So let's run through the modifiers. The basic strength of the salvo card was 3. The first modifier you check is main gun. Now, the Almirante Oquendo has a penalty of -2 because of the arrangement and number of her heavy guns, so 3 is reduced to 1. The battle range is extreme, so there's no modifier, it's +0. Nobody has the maneuvering advantage. The target number, the size of the US ship, is 0. The Oquendo has neither a veteran nor a poor crew, and the target is moving at speed 5, so it's neither too slow nor too quick. And the weather is really nice, so it's imposing no modifiers. So after all that, and it sounds very involved, but once you get used to it, you will make these calculations very quickly. The final firing strength of the Spanish attack is 1. So added to... Oh no! Now, if they'd got any number, basically they would have needed a 7 to have scored a hit. Anything less would have been a miss. But rather handily for demonstration purposes, an X when you're opening fire is a malfunction. So the Spanish are off to a terrible start because effectively the Almirante Oquendo's guns have gone clunk at the first hurdle. That is not what I wanted to have happen. None of my other ships are taking action, so I will simply draw back up to 7 cards. Sigh, deep sigh. And so there we go. That is 1 complete turn for both sides. I'm just going to zoom out again so we can get back our situational awareness. And so back to the United States, who probably don't even realize we attempted to fire, to be perfectly honest. I mean, if there was no flash and the shell just jammed in the gun or whatever happened. But the US has a definite idea of what they want to do. Annoyed at being thwarted the last time, they're going to try and close to get to grips with me. And this time I have no maneuvering card to stymie them, so that just goes through. And so the range is now long. We'll just see if they keep their formation. Yes, they do. They're a disciplined bunch, these Yanks. They're still outside secondary battery and torpedo range, so that is the end of their turn. And they will just draw a card. Oh, no, we don't want them getting those already. Back to the Spanish. My options are really horribly limited right now. However, I do have an engineer card. And the good thing about these fellows is they fix breakdowns automatically. If you don't have an engineer card for systems like the main armament, you can, and the steering, you can draw a random number to see if the crew managed to get it fixed without the engineer's help. If you get a 5 or better, they succeed. If you draw an X, the system goes down to the next malfunction level, or worse, goes offline completely. You do not want that happening. Now, I don't have the right combination of cards to be able to fire, so all I can do, having taken an action, is draw a card and hope for the best. Now, if I had taken no actions at all, I could have selected any number of cards and discarded them from my hand in hopes of more options, but I took an action with the engineer card, so there we go. Back to the United States. They're probably rubbing their hands with glee. Yes, they are. They're going to hold off on the maneuvering a bit because they want to have some fun with me at long range. So they're looking at their options. Their flagship, the Indiana, is going to open the ball by firing that combo at me. They're going to target the Almirante Oquendo even. But they have more firing cards where that came from. They're going to combine that one with that one so that the USS Iowa can target the Cristobal Colon. And as if my bad day couldn't get any worse, they're going to combine that one with that one. Oh, wait, no, I lie. That's a ranging fire card. What am I talking about? Oh, they may have run out. Oh, no, that's the one I was looking for. Sorry. They're going to combine that one with that one, and the Oregon is going to start pummeling the Infanta Maria Theresa. That's not very nice. Okay, and they're going to leave it at that. Phew, he says. So, evasive action. Luckily, I have a lot of these. So, because I love my flagship, I'm going to play that evasive action target aspect for -2 on the Indiana. Now, I'm just doing this for illustrative purposes, by the way. You can actually take your actions sequentially without revealing, you can see the effects of one action before deciding on the next one. I'm just doing it this way because it stops my brain hurting so much. So I am going to reply to the Iowa with a poor target aspect on the Cristobal Colon, and the same for the Infanta Maria Theresa. Let's just say we were doing a rather awkward squadron turn at the time. Don't know how much difference it's going to make. So following the procedure we did earlier, I'm just going to work through the various modifiers. So basic US attack strength of 3. They get a -1 because their turrets are a tiny bit clumsy. The battle range is now long, so they get a +1, so effectively it's still 3. Crew makes no difference. Target size and speed makes no difference. That evasion knocks it down to 1. So 1 + 6. Ow, they hit me. Despite all of that, they score a hit. So where do they hit me? Conning tower. Okay, this isn't good. Consulting the ship card, at long range, the main armament on the Indiana has a strength of 5. And I draw another card. Now, an odd number on this draw, which is the penetration draw, means you get a +1. So their attack strength, final attack strength on that location is 6. And consulting my ship card, the armor on the conning tower is 4. So my poor admiral has the dubious distinction of getting one of these shell hole tokens to show the conning tower's been hit. And, just to make my life worse, I draw to see whether he's been killed. A 3 or less means he's dead. Oh dear, my admiral has just been killed at the outset of the engagement. So, okay, he wasn't the brightest of blokes, but it was nice having him. Main reason I say that is because now that he's gone, I lose my formation card and I can no longer play them because I've no other senior officers to take his place. So that is actually a really serious loss and a significant achievement for the US. The question is my life going to get any worse? So, Iowa versus Cristobal Colon, running through the various modifiers. Their final attack strength is 1. They have the decency to miss. Thank you. Thank you very much. And the same applies to the Oregon. She has the same modifiers pretty much that the Iowa did. And she misses too. Well, that's good news. So despite the majority of the shots being misses, the US have had a really satisfying turn there. And they get to draw back up to their full hand size of 10 cards. Oh dear. Ah! Oops. Oh, please, no. No! See, in a 2-player game, I wouldn't be able to see all this. I would have been, as lulled into a false sense of security as someone could be in my situation. But no. So, what is my leaderless squadron going to do now? To be honest, there's nothing we can do. Damage party can't repair conning towers. It's basically gone. Don't have the right ranging fire card to use that one, and I've only got an evasive action card. My hand size, of course, now is 7, because I've got the 4 ships, got the 3 that I generate automatically. No Admiral to be a pest, because he wasn't very good, to be honest. So I'll draw my 3 cards and hope for the best. Oh, okay, at least I can fight now. So going back to the US player, needless to say, he rather enjoyed doing that to me. So he's going to resist the temptation to close on me in favor of more firing. The Indiana is going to see if it can repeat its lucky streak and hit the Oquendo again. The Iowa, can the Iowa squeeze a big one out? No, not. Oh, they can do a slightly reduced strength shot, so they'll take it. It's a target-rich environment, so why not? And I think that's all they can do, yes. I say all they can do, I mean really it's pretty terrifying from where I am. And I only have the 1 evasive action card. Well, given that the poor Oquendo has already been quite badly hurt, I'm going to... well, I say badly hurt. She's lost her nerve center. I'm going to give her an evasive action with smoke. So here's hoping I am lucky. The range and the main gun penalty cancel each other out. But the evasive action knocks it down to a 3. Plus 3. Oh no, that's a 6. That's exactly what they needed to land another hit. I'm going to find out what the crew of the Indiana's drinking. See if I can order some for my lot. So which bit of us do they hit? The funnel. Oh dear. Well, that goes straight through, because the funnel's armor, of course, is 0. So that's very bad news. So they've put holes in my funnel. Probably, I mean, given that they've hit us with 13-inch guns, they've probably knocked the darn thing right over, or at least one of them. And I mentioned this being bad news because the loss of the funnel carries the -1 speed penalty. So we have been forced as a squadron to reduce our speed to 5. Now, not necessarily a disaster, because at least we're traveling at an equivalent speed to the US ships. But if you're the one trying to run away, it's not great. It means we no longer get that positive modifier when we're trying to counter their maneuvers with maneuvering of our own. And the pain isn't over yet, because the Iowa's taking her shot and we have nothing to reduce it with. So yes, because there's no reduction, it remains a fire strength of 2. And they just miss. The Cristobal Colon is showered with water as water spouts come up on either side. They've got the range, they're probably even straddling us, but they have not hit us. Thank heavens. And we're still too far away for secondary gunfire. Let's keep it that way. Because at the risk of sounding a bit like a slightly panicky Admiral Akbar, if we go right in among them, we won't last long against those US battleships. We might scratch the paintwork on a few of them, but we'll have to see. Right, so it's my turn. Given that the poor old Almirante Oquendo is taking a bit of a beating, although I can still fire. See, the thing is, do I spend this turn blazing defiance at the enemy, or do I run? Oh, do you know what? Spanish honor is at stake. We are going to spend another turn blazing away at the enemy in magnificent style, even if only one of our ships is doing the blazing away. The US is going to play a straddle reduction on me. make me regret my decision. So fire strength of 3. No modifiers except the straddle reduction, which makes it 1. Oof, a 0. No, we were miles off. In fact, I think our range takers had trouble even spotting where that came down. It was so off target. Okay, never mind. At least they saw us shooting back at them, and maybe it made them a little nervous. I don't know. Well, we've got some options back, though. I'll take it. It could be worse. It could be a lot worse. And so now we move back to the US. That is a lot of firing. Oh wait, these are all firing cards. They don't have... Oh, they've got one ranging fire card. What's the best thing to play it on for them? Might be that one, actually. So, yep, feeling lucky, the Indiana is going to hurl more fire at the Admiral Oquendo. The tactic here, if you're wondering why they're concentrating on the one ship, particularly the one they've been damaging, is if they can cripple her, they can slow me down, and that would be very bad news indeed. I do not want that to happen, so they're going to get an evasive action, albeit a weak one, thrown back at them. So that leaves them with a value of 1. And they miss. Thank you, that's very decent of you, given how much hitting you've been doing at this range. I appreciate the miss. And 3 cards they get back. Oh no! No, 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 no! Ah! What are the Spanish going to do? I have the same choice I did last turn, run or pathetic display of defiance. I think pathetic display of defiance is the order of the day. The Oquendo is going to go right back at you, to the Indiana. And the Indiana is going to be very sensible and give me a hard time. So effectively they reduce my attack to 0, and we miss by a country mile. Oh well. It makes us feel better, you know. At least firing at the enemy does something for you. So that ends the Spanish turn for now. I've just glanced at the time, everyone, and I realise this video has gone on for quite a while. So what I will do is I'll call it there for now, but I will record the next part of this battle as soon as possible, and we'll see what sort of a conclusion that we are able to fight to. So I will wrap up for now. As always, thank you so much for your interest and for following this series. A huge shout out to Rolf and Nick for creating this wonderful, wonderful game, which I really, really hope gets into print. Because do you know what? I think it's marvelous. It's an absolute gift to anyone who loves this period of naval warfare. And I've got my fingers firmly crossed for them. But as always, a massive greeting to all of you, my fellow veterans in particular. Thank you so much for sticking with the channel, and I hope you found this video interesting. If you're here visiting my channel for the first time, a very warm welcome to you. If it's naval wargaming that's brought you here, I hope you'll enjoy wandering around and seeing what else I've put up. If it's wargaming in general that you're interested in, welcome. I hope there's lots here for you. But whoever you are and wherever you're watching from, thank you so much for your company. It's always really appreciated, and I hope I'll see you again soon. Thank you very much for tuning in. Bye.